Barclays head execution Jess Staley has been penalized £642,430 by regulators for violating rules by hard-to-identification a debunker. The finance hold credibility and the prudent regulatory credibility told he unsuccessful to instrument in due ability, thoroughness and zeal in his answer to a nameless email acquired in June 2016. The FCA and PRA began their censor in Mr. Staley's hold a year back. Directors detained decisive how lot Mr. Staley's benefit would be docked before the inquiry was full and they knew the fine superimposed. Mr. Staley told, I include sequentially recognized how my private participation in the question was inadequate, and I include apologized for mistakes that I done. I take the conclusions of the Executive Board, the FCA and the PRA, next their relevant investigations, and the sanctions regime that they include every attached. Mr. Staley gained £1 in 2016 and acquired a benefit of £1. The penalty amounts to on a 5 of his full reimbursement. It would include been more than rather than £900,000, but he was taking into account a 30% rebate for subsidence at an previous phase. Lot will believe how Jess Staley has got off easily. He yet has his job and the regulators stopped brief of proverb how he was unsuitable to go on in position, that would include certainly ended his career at Barclays and perhaps in banking business generally. As head execution of Barclays, Mr. Staley should include bin installation and sample of how to transactions in whistleblowing. Instead of, while he acquired nameless concoction versus a elder term of personnel, who was as well a boyfriend, he set the banking's own domestic investigations block to job to find the sameness of the debunker. How matters, since following the letter of credit crackle and rescue of the banking business segment, regulators entered strong rules to promote such in concerns of offense to go striker. Mr. Staley's actions immediately undermined how really security flap. Jess Staley now has the difference of creature the at first lug of a main finance establishment to include been penalized by the regulators and to include stored his work. The question dates behind to June 2016, while members of the Barclays Executive Board acquired nameless letters increase concerns on a elder servant who had been enlisted by the banking over how year. The letters, that were purified as whistleblowing, grown concerns of a private environment on the elder servant, and Mr. Staley's expertise of and part in behavior in such issues at a early tenant. They as well grown questions about the relevance of the recruiting trial accompanied by Barclays on the event. Mr. Staley requested the banking safety head, Troels Ording, to try to identification the authors of the letters, that the head execution mind were an unjust private assault on the elder servant. Mr. Ording, who before treated for Europol, contacted U.S. Fed law coercion agencies to assist path downward the email's descent, that had a U.S. postage stamp. Regulators will hold an eye in next on how Barclays oversees whistleblowing. They include said the banking to paper to it each year to explanation how it handle any issues. The includes manufacturing elder link offer private assurances how whistleblowing protocols are creature accompanied correctly. Mark Attendant, of the FCA, told, taking into account the key part of the head execution, the norm of due ability, thoroughness and zeal is more than needing rather than for some employees. Mr. Staley breached the norm of thoroughness require and anticipated of a head execution in a way how risked blasting trust in Barclays' whistleblowing procedures. Barclays, although, marked in its declaration how down there were no received information by the FCA or PRA how Mr. Staley acted in a absence of consistency nor any received information how he lacks suitability and correctness to go on to execute his part. The president, John McFarlane, told Barclays and its investors stood over Mr. Staley, this executive board has repeated its supporting for Jess, as include shareholders at recent 1 week's yearly general meet.